katana is arguably one of the most iconic swords in existence. Always has been and probably always will be. It is a slender, razor-sharp sword. It is a swift and precise weapon that was the weapon of choice in Japan for hundreds and hundreds of years. It's carried by elite members of the Japanese military, or Bushido, which means the way of the warrior. Also in Japan referred to as the bush warrior or the samurai warrior. The complete reference of the samurai goes way back even into China, and the Chinese symbol meant to wait upon. The first use of the word samurai was in the 10th century Kokin Wakashu, which was the first imperial anthology of poems. This sword began its long tradition in the Asaku period of 1663 AD and on. Some believe this sword was created by a man named Amakuni, who was the creator of the first katana, or single-edged curved sword. Prior to 700 AD, China and Japan traditionally used a two-edged straight-edged sword, and it was around 700 AD that the katana first started showing up being less curved than the tachi sword. The katana was a way of life for warriors, and they wore this very elaborate armor. The martial art of using the samurai sword is referred to as kanjutsu, and it was traditionally used by the Sanjo Yashimari of Kyoto until the 1400s. The katana was the weapon of choice by samurai and was specifically designed to draw and strike with one motion. It was swift, very precise. But along with the katana, the traditional samurai would also carry a short sword referred to as the wakizashi and a dagger referred to as a tancho. This sword has only changed slightly over the centuries. The 14th and 15th century is traditionally a 70 to 73 centimeter long sword. By the 16th century, it was shortened to 60 centimeters and then increased again to the 73 centimeters by the 17th century. During the Shakaya shogunate period, starting in 1274, the samurai were elite warriors. The katana was the weapon of choice and continued to be. There's several battles that really kind of displayed what the samurai were all about. One of them began with the Mongol invasion in 1274, where the Mongol Yong dynasty sent 40,000 men and 900 ships to invade Japan, and Japan was defended by only 10,000 samurai successfully. During the shogunate period, the samurai dominated, but evolved into really more into people just being in the upper class as bureaucrats or leaders rather than warriors. By 1876, they forbid the wearing of swords by soldiers. Entering into the 20th century, they began to reintroduce the katana as being really more of a sword for officers as the military became modernized throughout Japan. There were several periods of construction of this sword, and it went several different ways. The Jikoto period was pre-900 AD, the Goto period from 900 to 1596. The Shinto period was 1596 to 1780, and the Shinshinto period was 1781 to 1876. The Gandeto period from 1876 to 1945, and finally the Shinskuto period from 1953 to present. And the construction of these swords really varied only slightly on how they incorporated hard steel, soft steel, and medium grade steel into this sword. Traditionally, the way that it's made, they began with shagain, or a soft steel, was the inner core of the sword. And then ka-again, which is the medium steel, took over the body, but it was the hyan, or the hard steel, which took over the ha, or the blade, or the kasaki, or the tip, which gives it its razor sharp precision. And it was the incorporating of taking the soft steel in the center, the medium grade steel on to make up the body of the sword, and that hard steel is the blade and the tip, that really defined what we all know the katana to be, which is just darn razor sharp. In 1868, it ended the samurai era, and it was replaced by modern military uniforms and firearms. But it was really that shogunate period that the samurai dominated. But it really became, the samurai became more as Japanese feudal lords, and they would really reign over regional daimyo in Japan. But it was around that 1868 period that the Meiji Restoration, which restored imperial rule of the Empire of Japan and kind of just did away with the samurai way. until they got into around World War I and World War II, where it really just became more of a sidearm for officers. And even today, it's just such an iconic sword, but it's really hard to find anything made like it was made during that shogunate period. There's several parts of the katana, but traditionally what they're referred to as the habaki is the wedge-shaped metal collar used to hold it into the scabbard, or the kasaki, which is the tip of the katana. The saga, which is the wooden scabbard, the suka, which is the handle and designed big enough for two hands, suketa, which is the stringing of the handle, and then of course you have the ha, which is the blade. If you ever can get a chance to take a look at some of these beautiful blades, especially those made really between about 1300 and 1600, they're just exceptional marvels of craftsmanship to look at. There's our take on the katana, and one of the greatest things about this weapon, like all the weapons we look at on this channel, is good must always rise above evil, and the best way to do that is with good weaponry. And thank you for watching The History of Weapons.